and welcome to another video where I'm going to be showing you how to fly using Microsoft Flight Simulator, and this is Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. So firstly we're going to the world map, and this is where you can see your airplanes, and you can see here that I've actually downloaded some liveries for the A320 Neo, the Airbus. These are free to download. These are custom made by developers out there in the community, so I'll leave a link in the description for you to download these. The one that I'm going to be flying with today is the Saudi Arabian Airlines. So this is the world map, so you can see here this is the live time in the world, as you can see, and I am based in the UK, so I will just zoom in to the UK to select my departure airport. And today we're going to be flying out of Gatwick, so you can simply search for it within your history, or you can just type it in, and the destination airport is going to be Heathrow, London. And what you want to do here is you want to go down to IFR and select either low or high altitude airways. Because it's a short flight, we're going to keep it low, and you'll see here that it just creates a straight line between the two destinations. But within the approach, I'm going to select the ILS, and going to be wanting to land at 27 right runway. So you can see here that it's mapped out the flight from Gatwick to London, but I'm going to start from scratch, so I'm going to start from ramp number 30. So I'm going to select that as my departure point rather than the runway, and this means that the airplane is going to start completely off, and we're going to switch everything on and get going. So it's going to be right from the start. So here we go. So once the main screen loads, here we are at Gatwick Airport. We're going to jump straight into ramp 30. And you can see here this is Saudi Arabian Airlines, and we're ready to fly. So firstly, you can see here that the cockpit is completely off. Everything is switched off. So the nice thing about Flight Simulator 2020, it gives you the option to go through quite an easy checklist, really. So you select checklist and you start evaluation, and this will take you through everything that you need to switch on. So we start off by switching on the battery switches and the external power. Once that becomes available, the engine generators need to be displaying fault, which they do. Then we need to bleed the engine air switches, which we'll just do there. And we need to switch the APU master switch on, and also APU start on as well. And once we've done that, we just got to wait for the available light to come on. And once that's done, you can see there at the bottom it says APU starting, please wait, and the percentage is getting up to 100%. So once that gets to 100, that should switch to avail or available. And this is a nice way to start any flight just from scratch, so that you know exactly what real pilots have to go through. So the avail light's on, so now we can move on to the APU bleed. Press that button. External power, switch that off. And fuel pumps, let's switch those all on, so there's 6 of them. And the beacon light needs to be on as well. So that's everything that we need to do before starting the engine. So we can now move to starting the engine, and again if we select evaluation, we're firstly going to check that the thrust levers are idle, which they are. Then we go to the engine mode selector, and we need to change that to start. And then we need to switch the engine master 2 and 1 on. And once we've done this, we need to just check and wait for the engines to fire up and become stabilized. So I'm just going to wait now for both engines to fire up, so you can see the numbers in the dial firing up. And then once this is done, we're going to move on to the after starting engine checklist, and after that we should be ready to push back and get on with the flight. So we're still waiting for the engines to be stabilized. We'll take off the parking brake once we're ready to push back. So I'm just going to ignore that for now. Right, so the engines are now stabilized, so now we can move on to after starting engine. So 3 things here. We just need to turn off the APU bleed, so we just press that button there. So it's quite nice and easy, it tells you where the buttons are. The APU master switch, we need to turn that off. And the engine mode selector, we just need to switch that back to normal. And now we are actually ready to depart. I'll touch on the autopilot settings a bit later, but for now we're just going to request pushback, so we can see here now that we've completed all the checklist. So we'll go back to the top, see there's the aeroplane, have a nice look around, see that we're ready to be pushed back, and we're going to be taking off from runway 26 left. So let's go to the ATC, and we're going to request pushback, but we're going to steer to the right to give us enough room so that we can turn around and go towards taxi towards the runway. So it's just pushing back. And normally when you're taxiing, you don't want to be going over 20 knots, otherwise you'll be going too fast. You can go faster than that, but to keep it realistic, we'll stick to 20 knots. So we're just going to stop the pushback there. I think we're in a good enough position now to line up with the taxiing for the runway. So the truck will move out of our way so that we can start to move forward. There we go. Excellent. So now we just need to make our way to runway 26L. So we're going to fire up the engines a bit. Remember, we're going to try not to go too fast, and we're going to use the rudder to control our left and right movements. And we're going to slowly make our way to 26L runway. So I've deliberately selected ramp 30, which is quite close to the entrance to the runway, purely just to save time on the amount of time you need to taxi. So I've just cut clip there just so that you can see lining up now for runway 26L. So we're just going to wait to get confirmation for takeoff and clearance. So we're just going to wait. So we're just going to request takeoff clearance now using IFR.
Gatwick Tower, Airbus November 456 Sierra Victor, ready to go runway 26 left IFR.
And again, the game makes it very easy for you to go through these settings and request the clearance. You know, I'm by all means not a pilot or never piloted the plane before, so just having these sort of steps makes it so nice and easy. And I'm just getting the flaps into position now as well. I'm going to drop them down to 4th level, the maximum, just to give us the best lift possible. So just going to swing left and turn right onto runway 26L. Now the route's already been pre-planned in, so we'll have a look at the autopilot settings and the GPS settings once we're in the air. But for now, just going to line up the aircraft to the center of the runway. And you can see here that I'm turning on the primary flight display, and also with the constraints, because that's going to show us what altitude we need to be. And I'm now also at 100% throttle, and the flaps are fully down. So once we get to about 150 knots, we're going to rotate, and we have liftoff. So as we take off, we're going to retract the landing gears. See them down here. Little high pitch there, so we're going to bring that slightly down. And I'm going to climb now, but what I'm going to actually do is engage the autopilot, and I'll talk to you now about a bit how the autopilot works. So basically right now the autopilot is guiding the aeroplane to 3,000 feet. The heading is also being automatically set to the flight plan that we pre-programmed in the beginning. And the speed there, you can see I brought the throttle down slightly to allow for the or to prevent the aircraft from overspeeding. But also now I'm just adjusting the speed settings there on the left to about 220 knots. And that's because we're flying under 10,000 feet and we don't want to go above 250 knots. So here you can see that the aircraft now is climbing or reducing its altitude to about 3,000 feet, and we're going to maintain a speed of around 220 knots, and the heading will be aligned to the flight plan that we've already preloaded. So you can see here that the aircraft is now lining up with the navigation, the GPS that we pre-planned from the beginning using the world map settings. So this dial here allows you to adjust the speed settings. So see, we're bringing it down to around 200, and then this dial here allows you to adjust the altitude. So you can see on the left hand side on the PFD, you can see here that in green we've got speed, navigation, and also the altitude, which is currently in descent, so we're trying to bring it down to 3,000 feet. And the aircraft now is lining up with the navigation line to bring us in to the decline and the approach to runway 27R. So the idea is that once we get to a straight line path with the runway, we'll be able to catch the ILS signal, and then we'll be able to bring the aircraft in for a smooth landing. So you can see here that speed, altitude, and navigation are all on autopilot. We've got a really good speed now, 200, and we're maintaining a feet at 3,000 feet. The constraints are on as well, so we can see what altitude we should be at each of the waypoints. The flight director is on, and we'll turn on the ILS once we make that turn, the final turn to the runway. And then this is your main autopilot. Once we get closer to, once we catch the ILS signal, you'll see some grids appear here on the PFD. So we will explain later how we turn on the approach hold to make sure that we catch the ILS signal and the approach hold is correct and aligned so that the aircraft comes in quite nicely to the horizon. So you can see here we're progressing quite nicely along our flight plan, and we're following ATC. We're keeping at 3,000 feet, so we've got that going on the left hand side, and we've got our VFR map just to see where we are. And as I mentioned, once we get to this waypoint here, that's where we're going to turn on our ILS, and that's where we're then going to match the approach hold. But in the meantime, let's just admire some of the views from the aircraft. You can see here, quite nice, super detailed views from inside and outside. And what I love is the actual shots of the wings. You can see the wing flexing, which is absolutely amazing. And I've set this to live weather actually today, and it is quite windy, so you probably see the aircraft moving quite a bit. And the fact that we are at a low altitude, you're probably going to notice a lot more turbulence. But it's okay, you know, we're going to be landing with ILS, so it should be fairly controlled. But it's just nice to have this ability to land using ILS, which means that if done correctly, we're going to have a pretty smooth landing. But you can see here from the views, we can see the Shard, you can see the Houses of Parliament, you can probably see Tower Bridge. This is actually one of my favourite ways of coming in to London Heathrow when flying from aboard. 27 White allows you to see, you know, quite a bit of London. I'm coming from the south on this particular flight, but especially when you're flying in from Europe or from France, it allows you to go over the River Thames and get a nice view of London. So back to the flight, just dropping the altitude down to 2,000 feet. We're going to hold our speed at 2,000. We're going to turn on 1 degree on the flaps just to slow our pace down, and you'll see the aircraft automatically starts to turn. And we're also going to turn on the ILS info, so you can see the button there. I've just activated it, and now you can see these 2 red purple diamonds that will show up on the PFD. And what we have to do now really is, most importantly for the one on the right hand side, the purple diamond on the right hand side, wait for that to come down and align itself with the horizon line, and then press the approach hold button as soon as it does that. And what that will do then is it will align the horizon of the plane to the runway, so that we'll get a nice descent. So in terms of speed, we're currently at 170 knots. I'm going to try and aim to be at 150 or slightly lower for landing. So we're still waiting for that purple diamond to come down, but you can see here now that we're lined up quite nicely with the runway 27R, so we're following our VFR route quite nicely. We're just going to wait for that purple diamond to come down. You can see it slightly coming down, and once it comes down, we're going to turn on the approach hold button. So we're waiting for confirmation as well from the ATC regarding clearance for landing, which we should be getting shortly. So you've got to sort of keep an eye on quite a few things here. So at the same time, we're waiting for that purple diamond to come down, and it's slightly coming down now, and once it sort of intersects that yellow line and meets, that's where we turn on approach mode. So now we don't need to worry about our altitude. The only thing we really need to worry about now is our speed and our flaps. So flaps are currently at 1 degree, so we're going to notch them down a bit more as well to slow down. And of course we're going to need to take the gears out, which are coming out now. And we've got clearance from ATC as well, so we don't need ATC for now as well, so we can clear that as well. So keep ourselves concentrated and focused on the landing now, which can be quite tricky because as soon as you come in, you do need to disengage the autopilot, and then it's being fully focused on the landing. So you can see here we're at 170 knots. We're not worried about the altitude. The ILS is managing. We're dropping down the flaps further now, which is just to give us a nice slow approach. And we're going to reduce the speed to about just 150. That's the ideal speed. So you can see us lining up with the runway here, and what's quite interesting is you see these 4 lights here. If you basically have 2 red and 2 white lights, that means that you're coming in out of a good approach. and that's you should be meeting the target. If you get all red or all white, that means you're either too high or too low. So right now we're spot on, and you can see the plane has automatically aligned itself to the runway. We're at about 150 knots, and altitude is dropping. And now the flaps are fully engaged. And this is where we just need to keep an eye out now. We need to disengage autopilot. Getting ready to disengage. Checking our approach as well.
100.
And disengaged.
60, 50, 40, 30,
now it's
20,
managing the landing. Got to keep it steady.
40, 30, 20, retard.
Push the nose down. Apply brakes. And I'd say that's quite a smooth landing. Come to a stop. And now it's just about taking the aeroplane off the runway. If you leave it too long, you'll get a prompt from ATC to move the plane off the runway. And it's just taxiing it off and parking it safely. So we'll take it off towards the left here. Probably going the wrong way, to be honest with you, but it's alright. And my speed's way too high here. So I'll try and bring that down, just using the rudder to navigate the plane back to base. Allow the passengers to embark. They've been on a nice short flight. Got the bus going past. So we can see a spot there. I think I might actually hit this truck. Stay with the wing. It's alright though. Try to avoid it. Just line ourselves up on the yellow line. And let's bring it to a standstill. So that's it. That's a full flight from Gatwick to London Heathrow. I'm sure I made many mistakes in that flight, but still, you know, to get it from A to B quite safely with a reasonable landing, and you know, using the autopilot features, I think it's quite an achievement. And the next time I'm probably going to fly a bit further. But yeah, hope you enjoyed watching. Thank you.